Okay, in this video we're going to have a look at how trade liberalisation can impact both full employment. We'll have a look at a bit of external stability and also how it affects our living standards more generally. So first of all, the thing that with trade liberalisation, while it's positive always for inflation, so the impact on inflation is positive in both the short and long term, its impact on unemployment can be negative in the short term. So trade liberalisation can lead to increased structural unemployment, particularly as firms exposed to greater competition might not be able to compete and are likely to close down. So firms may need to downsize or close down, and many skilled employees may become redundant as a result of trade liberalisation. This can hurt full employment in the short term. The idea, though, is that if the economy is able to become more flexible and efficient, in the long term, unemployment should be reduced because there's more demand for our products in areas where we do have comparative advantage. So it boosts the size of our export markets in terms of areas where we do have comparative advantage. It also, and this is the key thing to focus on, it also makes us more efficient. The idea of exposing Australia to more competition, the idea is that Australian businesses will restructure, they'll invest in new technology, they'll come up with a more trained workforce, and that should all help to increase our international competitiveness as we lower our prices. So don't just focus on resources shifting to areas of comparative advantage. Also talk about the fact that firms have that incentive to restructure and change the way they go about their operations in order to try and maximise their sales. This should all help to boost production levels and increase the demand for labour and therefore reduce unemployment rates. So make it really clear that trade liberalisation has impacts outside of just those about shifting resources to comparative advantage. Trade liberalisation, especially free trade agreements, create bigger markets for our exporters. That creates more sales and more employment in these areas. So focus on that a lot as well. Trade liberalisation allows firms to reduce their costs of equipment and materials. So again, they can import materials for a cheaper price. That can also help them to lower their costs of production and should help boost our international competitiveness. So you can also focus on the cost savings that they achieve in terms of technology and capital and things like that, which also boost their profitability. In the long run, the unemployment rate should fall as the increased international competitiveness of Australian industries leads to increased aggregate demand and helps to lower the rate of unemployment. So in the long run, unemployment rates should fall as we become more internationally competitive as a result of shifting resources to comparative advantage, but also as a result of restructuring and becoming more efficient. In terms of external stability, trade liberalisation can have negative effects in the short term because we import more, so imports become cheaper, so you could link that to increased debits in the balance of merchandise trade, perhaps net services. In the long term, however, again, that idea of increased competition from imports encourages increased productivity and performance. So firms are likely to restructure, they'll invest in new technology, they'll find more innovative ways to produce, and therefore the firms remaining in the market should be more productive, increase technical efficiency, which should help to reduce inflationary pressures. So in the long run, as we become more efficient, this should help to boost our international competitiveness, increase demand for our exports, again because there may be lower tariffs and things on our exports, and increase the net exports component of aggregate demand. This will help to reduce the balance of goods and service deficit and decrease the current account deficit because we're exporting a greater value of goods and services. The decreased CAD, and it's important that you recognise this, should help to reduce pressure on to borrow because we don't have to fund as much of the CAD. There's less of like a savings investment gap, which should help to ease pressure on net foreign debt. So short term can be negative for all the goals, external stability, full employment, growth, but it should be positive for inflation. In the long term, there are benefits for all of the goals. In terms of living standards, you get a question about how trade liberalisation can impact living standards. You want to be talking about the annual levels of production and income in the economy, or the total level of GDP per capita when you're looking at material living standards. If you're looking at non-material living standards, you're talking about things like personal happiness, choice, democracy, level of cultural enrichment, crime, etc. when you're looking at non-material living standards. In relation to trade, the positive impacts for our living standards is that resources should move away from inefficient industries towards more efficient industries. That will help to boost our productive capacity. We'll become more productive as we specialise in what we're good at. By boosting allocative efficiency, this should increase the net benefits for society. Some more sort of straightforward benefits for our living standards: we should get access to lower consumer prices because of cheaper imports, which will boost our purchasing power. Higher real incomes as a result of increased employment as we become more competitive should help to boost real GDP per capita. and increase our ability to purchase goods and services. So we get access to more choice, we get cheaper imports, we have higher incomes, which should boost our access to goods and services. Incomes have gone up by around 3,000 to 4,000 per person on average because of trade liberalisation. The higher material living standards should also give people more time for leisure if they're able to increase their incomes, and they may be able to find time for voluntary work, more opportunities to donate, which can boost their non-material living standards. You've also got increased consumer choice, which boosts our non-material living standards, increased employment in the long term, which you can link to both material and non-material living standards, and there are also things like increasing our cultural enrichment, providing more diverse experiences. So overall, when you're summarising the impact trade liberalisation has on living standards, you want to talk about lower inflation, which helps to boost consumption and investment, so it boosts our international competitiveness. This creates jobs. Whenever you can link something to creative jobs, you want to talk about how that boosts incomes and boosts purchasing power. So there's more people in employment because of the decrease in inflation. That creates jobs, which creates income and boosts purchasing power. Some negative impacts. Some people will experience increased unemployment in areas where we don't have comparative advantage. So there can be increased structural unemployment. It can reduce consumers' non-material living standards if they are unemployed. So it could affect their sense of self-worth. Could create family tensions. There would be more family tensions in those industries like manufacturing where people have lost their jobs. Can cause more crime. Because we're exposed to greater economic instability, so there's a chance that because we're relying on exports, if other countries experience downturns, it can affect our growth as well. This can hurt our living standards as well. And finally, increased production can exploit our non-renewable resources. So if we have increased production in areas of comparative advantage, that can have negative implications for our environment. The benefits, however, should outweigh the costs in the long term, and it also provides more money for the government. So the government can get more money from taxes, which they can use for funding for areas that are of concern. Some countries, just be mindful, are moving towards using more protection, using quarantine laws, safety regulations. Donald Trump is trying to protect their industries a lot more because of the fear of losing local jobs, but most countries are embracing international trade going forward. Thank you.